Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Off the Top Rope here on the Off the Mic Sports Network here, reviewing AEW Dynamite Grand Slam from New York City, Arthur Ashe Stadium. So I need to address this right off the top here. This show actually did some really impressive ticket movement within the last couple of days. I think they probably got close to 8,500, 9,000 tickets sold. And I see a lot of fans just trumpeting this up like, oh, great accomplishment, great accomplishment. As like, first of all, number one, that's what happens when you actually promote a show. And AEW did next to no promotion, maybe because they have too many of these shows jammed up against one another. They have All In, they had All Out. They've got a 5-year anniversary next week. They've got Grand Slam. They've got Collision Grand Slam. They're just throwing all this shit together. And maybe that's why Tony Khan is just spread too far and he's not investing in a lot of long-term stories and not really, he's just booking for the sickos. But they did some good, local promotion. Like, Mercedes Moné was on a bunch of radio shows. By the way, where the fuck is she? Where the fuck is she? She's not on the television. I mean, listen, it's sad that I don't want to watch her, but it's also sad that she's not there, if that makes any sense. But, there's just a lot of great promotion throughout New York City. I think it got a lot of people hyped up that it was going to be at Arthur Ashe. But in saying all that, this event 3 years ago when it debuted in 2021 had 20,000 people in that stadium. It went down to 12,000 the year after that, and then 11,000 this year. So you guys are celebrating 8,500 to 9,000 tickets in a 20,000 seat stadium. Some people were saying, oh, we might have more people than we're at Raw. Guys, Raw was in Ontario, California, which is like a couple hours away from Los Angeles. It's like a 10,000 seat building that they were at in Ontario, California, and they sold it out. You guys can't even sell half of Arthur Ashe Stadium. So what are we doing here? This is the problem with AEW, is they celebrate mediocrity, and that's kind of what this show was. It was there was good stuff on the show, but it's nothing I haven't seen from AEW in my life. They're not evolving. They're not changing. They're just booking for the sickos, and they are just doing what this fan base that, give credit to New York. They did show up and they had some last minute push with a lot of ticket sales. But guys, you had 11 to 12,000 people in that stadium over the last 2 years. And now you could barely get to 9. And that's a celebration? What are we doing here? And you're going to celebrate the new television deal when it gets announced inevitably next week. And you'll get $170 million, and it's just like I said, I feel like I rant a lot about AEW just because you guys are so focused on trying to dunk on WWE when they're doing so well. So many people were ripping Raw for having a 1.3 rating. Guys, they faced 2 Monday Night Football games. Two Monday Night Football games. And you want to just talk about how, Raw didn't have the greatest ratings. Worry about your own show and worry about trying to fill up a stadium. We'll see what happens next week in Pittsburgh for the 5-year anniversary show. But this was a fine show. I mean, it was a by the numbers. For a Grand Slam, it just didn't feel like that big, I guess. There wasn't really a whole hell of a lot significant that happened, which is kind of standard for AEW shows. But we start off with the big mystery match that was going on that we all knew was going to happen. Nigel McGuinness taking on Bryan Danielson. I will maintain and I will go to my grave in saying the build to this match was one of the biggest misfires in maybe professional wrestling history. You have these two guys who have such rich history over 15 years, and Bryan Danielson having the career that he had, and Nigel McGuinness literally having to retire when Bryan was going to his peak in WWE. There's so much that you could have tackled, and basically all we got out of it was Nigel cutting 2 promos, one saying, hey, I've got the match, and then one basically saying that Bryan's scared of him on Collision, which nobody watches on Saturday night. So this was a huge, huge misfire, and I think it really played a role in the match itself, because yeah, I love Bryan Danielson, and he's going to make me believe whatever he's doing in this ring. And Nigel did a really good job in this match for a guy who, in his first singles match in 13 years. It was a fun and well-worked match, but there wasn't a whole lot of reason to care because Bryan's not losing. And he wasn't there, and he was literally suffocated 17 days ago. And you're basically telling us that that doesn't matter because you booked this match when he was supposedly indisposed. Like, it's just a lot of stuff with the build just really bothered me. But I like the way that the show, like, sort of went to it. Like, you had Nigel in the ring. Everybody's going crazy to see him wrestle. He looks in great shape for a guy who's been a commentator for the past decade. It's insane what amazing shape Nigel is in. So then Bryan Danielson's AEW music plays. He doesn't come out. Nigel just heals on Danielson. He demands that Paul Turner gives him the count out win. So Paul Turner gets to about 6, and the final countdown hits. I could see this coming from a mile away, that he, like, literally every match on really this tour, pretty much since the world title match, is going to be like Tony's going to pay out the ass for this literally the final countdown. So I could see that coming from a mile away. A lot of good work in this match. Like I said, it was a really technically sound and really well worked match. Like so Danielson and Nigel at one point in this match are at ringside. Danielson does the famous spot where he runs Nigel McGuinness's head into the ring post, which a lot of you Ring of Honor fans are very familiar with, or some of you fans who have brushed up on your history, which I guess AEW expects you to brush up on your history because they didn't tell you about it through this whole feud, which was another reason why I didn't really like the build of this. Danielson grabbed the arms of McGuinness, pulled him into the post again. Like I said, that was similar to that spot. McGuinness then slammed Danielson's arm on the post before rolling him back inside the ring. That was a big story going into this match. Then later on in this match, Nigel gets Bryan up on the top turnbuckle, hits his Tower of London, goes for his Tower of London finisher, but Bryan avoids it. Danielson then hits the Busaiku knee, but he falls on his right forearm that was injured earlier in the match. Good storytelling. This is why Bryan's the GOAT, or up there in terms of being the GOAT. If you want to debate that in terms of how his AEW run has gone, this guy is still one of the greatest wrestlers I've ever seen in my life. Like, he is just, every time he gets in there, he gives it his all, and you just believe everything that he's doing in that ring. It's really remarkable to watch. Danielson gets up and throws his kicks at the kneeling Nigel McGuinness, the famed yes kicks, which are now the it kicks in WWE. Danielson got McGuinness in an awkward position on the top turnbuckle, but McGuinness flipped over, kicked Danielson, but then Bryan, Bryan, while this was in this awkward position, was just like sort of, going at Nigel's neck, which was kind of sick. It was a pretty neat looking spot when Nigel was like hanging up in the ropes. So that was, so he gets a 2 count after Nigel gets out of this. He basically clubbed Bryan's chest. He's got a pretty mean looking lariat, even for a guy who hasn't worked in 13 years. McGuinness does the whole teeter-totter thing in the ropes. He does a lariat clothesline, but that only gets a 1. Bryan does the big babyface fire-up thing. Nigel thumbs the eye of Danielson, and then he threw a ripcord knee. That gets a 2. McGuinness throws some elbows at Danielson, but they kind of looked, they were fine. So then Nigel then hits his Tower of London. Nigel actually put Danielson's arm in a submission hold out of it and wrenched it back on it. Danielson rolled out of it, threw some elbow strikes. Until Nigel got at his back. We get some more strikes in the middle of the ring. Danielson gets the better of it, throws some headbutts, but Nigel grabs his arm, fell back while driving it into his knee. McGuinness then hits Danielson with a knee strike. Danielson bounced off the ropes, but McGuinness turned him inside out with a clothesline. That gets a near fall. Danielson then hooks in the lapel lock, struggles to maintain the grip due to his forearm injury. Great storytelling again. Bryan releases the hold, throws some punches, and then he applies a modified version of the hold. McGuinness rolled onto Danielson, who got back on top, locked in the holds. Again, really just good technical wrestling. There's a lot of debate as to what Nigel said here right before he tapped out, but he taps out. It was either a thank you or a fuck you. So whatever you want to believe, if you really want to believe the hatred side of this, then he said fuck you. If you really want to believe that this was a match that Nigel really wanted to have, and his first singles match in 13 years against his greatest rival, maybe it was thank you. I don't know. Jim Ross pointed this out immediately and thought it was thank you. So I'm going to lean on the side of maybe one of the greatest commentators of all time, that he knows what the fuck he's talking about. Because, man, if JR missed that, that's bad. But it depending on how you look at it, either way we look. But listen, it was fine. This was a fine match. My issue is the build, and I think the build really hurt what this could have been. And this could have been a really, iconic moment in wrestling. Instead, it was a great match on a real, in front of a, specialty crowd. Yeah, like I said, 9,000 people. It's impressive for what AEW's been doing recently, and it was in a bigger venue setting, so it felt bigger. But they could have made it bigger than it was, and I think they just gave it away here because they panicked with the way ticket sales were going for this event, and they had to move to something different. And especially after the suffocation angle and doing that, just the booking across all of this really just didn't make a lot of sense. But Bryan Danielson's just so effing good that it's hard for me to hate on one of his matches whatsoever. Nigel's awesome. And I think the best thing I can say is, for a guy who was out 13 years, guy looks in phenomenal shape, and he wrestled a pretty damn good match. So credit to those two. But again, it just felt like it was there, and there wasn't a whole lot of reason for me to care. So then after the match, this was just odd. So after the match, Christian Cage comes out, and he's on the verge of signing his contract that he can just open, because it's not a briefcase, it's just a contract for the AEW World Championship, because he won that really in a random finish in that All-In gauntlet. And so then Kip Sabian, as he's about to sign, runs out and steals the pen. Okay. And then Christian runs backstage chasing him. He comes face to face with Pac and Claudio, and Christian just goes to run after Kip, and that was it. What? Like, this is one of my big issues. I love Christian. I really love Christian Cage. I don't think him having that contract does anything for anybody. It doesn't help anybody. It really, it doesn't do any, Christian winning a world championship, okay, that might accomplish something for him, but it's really just do we really believe in a Christian world championship run? The guy has lost a lot. He has lost a lot. And it was an odd decision. I will continue to say, and I'll probably go back to this later in the show when we talk about the main event, with Jon Moxley and Darby Allin. I will continue to trumpet that I don't understand what in the world they're doing with Hangman Adam Page. This guy belongs in the main event. He belongs in that spot. So I don't know what they're doing. So that was just an odd way to end the segment. Then we get Hook Roderick Strong. This was a fine match. Just a lot. There was a lot of weapon spots. Taven and Bennett get involved. I'm not going to really go blow for blow. Strong goes for End of Heartache at the end of the match, but Hook counters with the Red Run, gets the submission win. What really was the story was after the match, because what's after the match is what needed to happen and what should have happened a long time ago. But first of all, Hook accepts a handshake and hugs Roderick Strong, which was admittedly cool. I don't know if that you guys maybe could admittedly. I mean, even the Undisputed Kingdom basically were, saying, hey, cool. So maybe babyface turn. I have no idea. So then Hook leaves the ring to go get interviewed by Shivani right by the announcer's table. Shivani points out, and this was pointed out a lot on commentary and also on social media by Taz, that the FTW title was introduced by Taz in 1998 at Elks Lodge, which is 3 miles away from Arthur Ashe Stadium. And then Hook started a promo, and he said, all good things must come to an end, and you knew what was going to happen. And so he basically said, on behalf of of his family, Hook thanked every wrestler who competed for this championship, as well as the fans who supported it. Hook announced that the title was officially retired. He handed the belt to Taz, and then they hugged. And that was a really nice moment. It was a really cool moment to see first title, the creator and the first owner of the title, and the last owner of the title, in Hook being his son, was a really nice moment. And I'm not trying to disrespect the FTW title. It just never really, did a whole hell of a lot for anything. And Hook was kind of off in his own little sphere. And his identity was really this championship. So for them to, I think this was the right thing to do. This was a beautifully handled segment. You do it in Queens. You do it in New York. You do it 3 miles away from where the title was created. The son hands it to the father. Taz is clearly emotional. I love Taz to death, man. Yambag City, I quote him all the time. I love Taz. And that had to feel really fucking cool for him. So good on Tony Khan for giving a moment to those two men. I just hope that Hook finally starts getting booked like an actual star in this company, and not just, having a title that effectively, literally in AEW, I think there was only 3 FTW champions. It was Brian Cage, who was given it, and then it was Ricky Starks, and then it was Hook. And then you had, in between, I don't really count like Jack Perry and Chris Jericho, because those were just goofy little, in between storylines. They're recognized as FTW champions, but like the other ones really like held on to it and had some meaning. Like the Jericho one was a joke, and the Jack Perry one, I don't know what the hell that was. Like that was just like, it's just so, if you want to count it, I think that's 5 FTW champions in the history of AEW. I'm just glad that they've moved on from this title. It had run its course. It had been 4 years, and this title was really doing nothing for anybody. And that's not to disrespect the title. I understand what it means, but it just, it wasn't really doing anything for anybody. So again, that was a really cool moment there at the end of that match. The match itself was fine. It was a standard FTW weapons match. It really didn't do much for me. I don't know why it was really on this show. But I think the reason, like, if you were going to point to one, is to do a moment like this on a big time show, one that's going to be more broadcasted. And frankly, Taz deserves something like that. Taz is a legend. He's great on commentary. He's great at virtually everything he does. And I really like Hook. I really do. I just really hope that this, it gives him a new identity in AEW, and he can kind of start anew. He can be Hook, but not be identified with his dad's legacy. He could start creating his own. And I think he was kind of tied to that a little bit. So I think that's what made this moment a lot greater than the match itself, which was fine. Then we get Young Bucks, which Matthew and Nicholas Jackson. By the way, because there was no entranceway, good job, Tony Khan, so you don't get one of your stars seriously hurt. Granted, that was a freak accident with Adam Cole last year, but they learned, and they had just no ramp to the ring. So no Young Bucks Vader up from the middle. They come out of the heel tunnel for their match, and they're taking on Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher. Man, this was great, but holy crap! Like we really passed through. We passed through so many near falls. This was like the classic Young Bucks match on steroids. Like, and when you mix in Will Ospreay, who's just an amazing wrestler in his own right, and I like the Bucks too. It's just I feel like everything that they do is really the same thing. So we get back from a commercial break, and this is let's talk about the closing stretch here. So Ospreay and Fletcher come back after the break, and they hit simultaneous style clashes on both Bucks. That leads to a near fall. Ospreay hits a Stormbreaker on Matthew, but Nicholas breaks it up. Ospreay teases doing the Tiger Driver on Matthew, but Nicholas broke it up with a super kick. The challengers came right back with a TK Driver, and then Fletcher covered Matthew for a near fall. The challengers hit the Coriolis, which I think is the United Empire, which they came out to the graphic even to Ospreay's theme, and they were in United Empire gear, which was neat. Fletcher hit his brainbuster on Matthew, but Nicholas shoved Ospreay into the pin to break it up. So that was another near fall. There were so many near falls at the end of this that it got really ridiculous. Fletcher then knocked Nicholas off the apron and then hit him with a suicide dive. Callis takes his head. Don Callis was at ringside. Shocker. Because, anytime you have a Don Callis family member in a match, he's got to be on commentary. So Don takes off his headset, and of course he just hands Fletcher the screwdriver. Because we're still doing the screwdriver a year later after this became a thing. So Don distracts Rick Knox, worst referee in the game. Fletcher winds up to use the screwdriver, but Ospreay hooks his arm, takes it away from him. Ospreay then barks at Callis saying, "We're not doing it like that." Fletcher doesn't look happy about this. Matthew then hits Ospreay with one of the title belts while Rick Knox is distracted, just looking somewhere for no reason. Fletcher ducks the belt shot. He rolls up Matthew for 2. But after Matthew had passed off the belt to Nicholas, Rick Knox missed another belt shot from Nicholas onto Fletcher. That leads to a 2. This is getting absurd. the Young Bucks then double super kick Fletcher and hit him with the BTE trigger, and Nicholas covers Fletcher for the 3 count, and that's the match. Like, look, this was what I expected it to be, but why? Like, why? Like, why are we doing? Why are we? I get it's a banger, and this is what you could deliver, but at least, on some level, it's like, yeah, you knew that Ospreay and Fletcher were not winning this match, and the fans were engaged in this match, admittedly. So you know what? That's cool. But the problem is, you've got the Young Bucks. They're not going to lose to a makeshift tag team like that, especially when Ospreay's got another championship match the next week. So you're kind of hurt there. A lot of these false finishes and a lot of these interference spots with Rick Knox looking like an idiot, it's getting tiresome. And then the screwdriver was ridiculous. Why are we still doing that? Like, just a lot of the classic spots that have just really, been watered down because they've been done way too much to death. Fletcher got pinned here, which was the right decision because he was the only guy really in this match that could take the pin. But why not give this spot to the Outrunners? I made fun of them for a while, but they're over. And they're a tag team. The people want to see them. Why not give this to the Outrunners? And why not even strap the Rocket to them? Because at least in that moment, you're going to at least cast some believability that somebody might win in this match. When you're doing the Young Bucks versus Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher, just because Will Ospreay's there doesn't mean that they're going to win the match. And Kyle Fletcher is the easiest option to have somebody take a pin so Will Ospreay could be protected going into his title match the next week. I had a huge problem with how this was set up because it completely just makes your tag team division look stupid. They did a whole gauntlet of all the tag teams in AEW, and they came up with Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher, who have been in a trio together, but they haven't been a tag team. Kyle Fletcher is a tag team partner with Mark Davis, who is injured. Aussie Open. It's just... And then there was nothing after the match. There was nothing after the match. Like, it would have been, like, especially with the United Empire gear on them there, it would have made it very devastating if Ospreay got turned on. And that would have created a little bit more drama of him being even more distracted, going into that Ricochet match next week. Who knows? Maybe that plays into next week. But I felt like there was a lot that they could have done here. Also, it felt weird and it felt pretty forced together. Admittedly, it was a lot of fun. This was a classic AEW match. It was a great match with a lot of cool moves and a bunch of kickouts and a bunch of false finishes that, Young Bucks win lull. Like Cena wins lull. Like, it's just like there's nothing really that really shocked me out of this match, I guess I could say. And that's a lot that I could say about AEW. So then we get Renee backstage. She's talking with the conglomeration along with Rocky Romero, who is now a part of the conglomeration. Orange Cassidy presents Rocky with a conglomeration t-shirt and invited him to join the faction. And I guess he's replacing Tomohiro Ishii, who was in the initial conglomeration, but he had to go back to Japan. Briscoe, Mark, I love Mark Briscoe. National treasure. I love that guy. So he plugs the new conglomeration t-shirt, said he wore a Dem Boys shirt because they were only 5 miles away from where the last Briscoe brothers match was held, which, yeah, rest in peace, Jay Briscoe. That hits deep. Marcus is doing so well in the absence of it, and that's another thing that I could give credit to Tony Khan. He's made Mark Briscoe, like, really, like, happy in just the face of just tragic, death last year. So Briscoe said the word of the day is vociferous. And then he closed with his cold crazy man rant with that whole thing. It's great. And I like I said, I love Mark Briscoe, and I love that they're making this like conglomeration. Like look, I'd like for them to be away from I was about to say Jericho Appreciation Society. I like them to be away from the learning tree. But, admittedly, Briscoe, O'Reilly, and Orange Cassidy, it works. They're fun. I'd like for them to do more with them because these backstage promos are actually really, really entertaining between all three of them. I love Kyle's facial expressions. Like, Kyle is low-key great with, like, his comedic facial expressions, even though he's not necessarily a very funny guy. Kyle is honestly one of the great parts about this. He kind of plays the straight man also in kind of a goofy way. And then Orange is just Orange. So that's great. So then we get Tony Schiavone standing on the stage. He introduces Prince Nana. So he's scheduled to give an update on Swerve Strickland. Nana does his dance. He said it's good to be in New York, and he did the whole Who's House biz. He said there's nothing mentally that can stop Swerve, but physically he's not cleared to return. Nana said Swerve is fighting every day for the fans. Listen, I have no reason to believe that he's not going to be on that show in a couple weeks in Tacoma. There's no reason for me to believe that a guy from Tacoma, Washington, is not going to be at Wrestle Dream. Like, come on. I'm a little surprised that they didn't go down that road, but then the surprise of the night, MVP makes his AEW debut. He walks onto the stage. He has his cane and everything. So he introduces himself and said Nana already knew who he was. MVP agreed that Swerve is the most dangerous man in AEW. MVP said Swerve was the most phenomenal talent to ever step foot in an AEW ring. He said Swerve's title reign will be studied by future generations, and then mentioned the wrestlers that Swerve beat as champion. MVP said he saw Swerve lose the title and have his family, his childhood home burned to the ground. He said Swerve's management was more concerned with selling coffee and shucking and diving for the fans. MVP handed Nana a card and told Nana to give it to Swerve when he's ready to talk business. Interesting. Nana shook his head in disgust and looked at the card. So this is interesting because one of the best parts about Swerve's act is Prince Nana and the dance, and everybody does it. So I don't know where Swerve goes without that. But inserting MVP into this is very, very interesting because this can go a lot of different ways. There's speculation about Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin going to AEW and forming a new version of the Hurt Business. Swerve Strickland could be involved in that. Swerve could use a little bit more character to him. I don't know where this goes. It's just they've got to keep in mind that Nana is a big part of what got Swerve over. Swerve is fantastic. I love him in the ring. He's great. He's awesome. He's won everything he does. But that Nana dance and just that song has really lifted him to another level. And I think if they took Nana away from him, I just don't know how I see that going. Everybody still loves Swerve, but it really, he was great when he got there, and he was great with Keith Lee, but it really never got to the level that we saw here without Prince Nana. So I don't know where this goes, but it's nonetheless very intriguing. And I was like, I'll poke a little bit. Like everybody, knocks on, WWE, and literally, most notable surprise on this show is the next WWE guy. It's just like Tony Khan can't help himself. He just can't help himself. He's just gonna pay whoever he wants and bring him in. I think MVP is a very valuable asset to have to your company. I don't know if I have a whole lot of faith in this creative from Tony Khan that is going to make this work. But, again, I will say that this was very, very intriguing to me because you have MVP coming in saying, hey, Swerve just lost everything. He lost the AEW World title, his childhood home. He got beaten in a cage. He's pretty much a broken physically and mentally down right now. Like, he could use different management. So let's talk business. So I don't know if this is going to lead to some sort of a feud with Nana still being involved. And, you have Swerve and maybe a Bobby Lashley or a Shelton Benjamin or somebody comes in to, be the next guy to face Swerve. I just don't know how that looks. So it's nonetheless very interesting. Then we get to the Women's World Championship match. Not a hell of a lot happened here. This was a 6-minute match. Mariah May keeps just, Mariah's great. But I just don't understand why this was on television with Yuka Sakazaki. She bullied her backstage. Yuka is over with the Joshi and the geeks and really the sickos, but this just kind of felt there. This is the second title defense really that she's had, I think, right? Yeah, and she's had another match with Queen Aminata. She's had a bunch of matches, and at no point did you think that she was ever going to lose. Yeah, she was in the ring with Nyla Rose, but yeah, Nyla Rose is a bigger person than her, a bigger woman than her, but she never thought she was going to lose here. You never thought she was going to lose to Queen Aminata. You never thought she was going to lose to Yuka Sakazaki, but Yuka goes for the Magical Girl Splash, but Mariah gets her knees up. She hits the knee strike and the Storm Zero because we still have to have Toni Storm's moveset in with her because we're playing this up. So then after the match, Mariah sets up to hit Yuka with the belt, but it's Willow Nightingale who comes out and runs in to confront Mariah May. This is interesting This is the first real challenger for Mariah. And here's the funny thing about it. Mariah got by the skin of her teeth against Willow in the Owen Cup final right before she turned heel. And they had that respectful handshake after the match, and then literally 5 minutes later, Mariah turns heel, and she's this evil character, and now she's the women's champion. So, I would love to see Willow go after the women's championship. Willow's fucking awesome. Like, I love that girl. She's as authentic as it gets in terms of, like, the way she cuts. She just feels like a babyface. It's impossible not to love her. Like, she is just, her style is great. Her promo ability is great. She's just a lovable, and it's just like, you want to give her a hug. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, she's so great. I love Willow Nightingale. So I would love to see Willow Nightingale and Mariah May. So, and then as this is going on and the confrontation is going on, Mina Shirakawa's music hits, and this gets even better. And May uses a distraction to hit Willow from behind with the belt. May runs to the stage. It picks up Shirakawa, twirled her around. Mina acts upset by what May did in the ring. And Sakazaki went to the stage and chased off May, and that's the end of the segment. So, listen, this is very interesting. This is the most interesting the women's division has been post All In. Because at least, you know, Willow's a very intriguing challenger for Mariah May. She's one of the most beloved babyfaces in the division. And then, on top of that, you've got Everybody Loves Mina Shirakawa, and she's coming in, and you've got that whole angle playing up here, and somewhere, Toni Storm is in the periphery. More of this, please. Not any of just the wrestling sicko shit where you're just giving title matches to random people. Build to stuff. Build to stuff. Because that's what matters. And people have always been craving and wanting to have Mina Shirakawa there as part of this whole thing, because they had built this so well with Mariah May. And since she won the title, we've basically forgotten about a lot of this crap. But now you have a new intriguing challenger. You have that love angle and, you know, that friendship angle with Mina, and how that's going to play out is interesting. So this was fine. The match didn't need to happen, but it was really to set up that post angle. So fine. So then we get Jon Moxley versus Darby Allin in the main event of this show. Winner gets the world title shot, and it's going to be at Wrestle Dream. Apparently, interesting note here, and I don't know if this is going to affect an announcement that's going to go along with you know, Max in the new pay-per-view. Max, had to channel Grinch there. I guess Excalibur on commentary basically says, yeah, BR Live is going away. That's caused a lot of issues for a lot of people, including me. So Fight and a lot of other places you're going to be able to order your pay-per-views moving forward, starting with Wrestle Dream October 12th in Tacoma. So that's out of the way. You know, this was a fine standard Darby, you know, Darby Allin, you know, Jon Moxley match. These guys work really well together. They're both fucking crazy as shit. Marina Shafir's out there. She kind of played a role in the finish, which I had a little bit of an issue with. So Moxley goes for the Death Rider. Allin avoids it, sends Mox into the ring steps. Allin returned into the ring, went for a second for a suicide dive, but Moxley moved, and Allin crashed onto the exposed floor, which was exposed earlier in this match. That Marina pulled up the mats to expose the floor, which for whatever reason you need to do that. So after Moxley does like a nasty looking like X-Plex on top of the ring steps that were right next to the exposed floor. So then he took a seat in the corner of the ring as the ref counted Allin, who eventually beat the count, returning into the ring. Mox shows his frustration because Darby's so resilient. He's crazy. The fans chanted, "You can't kill him." Yeah, you literally, I don't know what you can do to Darby Allin. Like, seriously, guy's been through glass. He's broken his foot. Like, he's been hanging from the ceiling. He's been in a casket. Like, I mean, that guy's crazy, almost to a fault, but I love Darby Allin. He's fun. So then Allin throws slaps at Jon Moxley. He drilled him with a slap to the face, which was nasty. Darby then sideslept Mox, who crashed into the exposed turnbuckle that had been exposed earlier in the match. Allin rolls up Moxley for a 2. He goes for a coffin drop, but Moxley catches him in the rear naked choke. But Darby's able to break the hold, getting a rope break. So then Moxley sits on the top rope, pulled Darby into a chokehold up there. Allen reached out, gouged Moxley's eye to break free, hit his head. But Marina Shafir just climbs on the apron while Allen's trying to set up for a superplex. That slight delay, and Moxley hits a avalanche Death Rider, which is a really sick transition. Like Darby looked like he was going to hit the suplex, and just in midair, Mox just grabs him and it's a nasty looking DDT, and that's the match. Jon Moxley wins this match. He is challenging for the AEW World Championship at Wrestle Dream. We'll get to that in a second. Listen, I like Jon Moxley. I just don't know why this needed to happen. You have Hangman Adam Page, who has been busting his ass, best character development in the business maybe, in the last year, coming off of the biggest match of his career, and he's not fighting for the world title? Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? What is the delay here? If this is going to be Bryan Danielson's last match as a full-time wrestler in his home state of Washington, which I think it's going to be, and Jon Moxley's going to beat him, then why? What? Why? Like, it should be Hangman Adam Page. Like, there's too much mystery and not a lot of substance with Moxley's character. They're trying to convince you that this is actually sort of relevant. A lot of people were expecting Shane McMahon to be a part of this. We'll see. I don't know if that's going to change anything about this whole hostile takeover after Moxley, I think, wins the title at Wrestle Dream. But it's just, like I said, I don't really... And they did a good job here after the match, putting some heat on this match that's coming up in a couple weeks. Bryan Danielson gets in the ring. He chokes Moxley with a necktie. Neat little callback there to when he got fired from WWE. Justin Roberts at ringside probably was having nasty flashbacks. It was having nasty flashbacks to that moment where he was getting choked by the neck. That did get Bryan Danielson fired. You guys can go look up the story. So then Darby gets held to the back. Pac and Claudio pulled Allen off Moxley, and Marina's actually got Bryan in a choke as this is going on. So they try to all pull Bryan off of Moxley. And then Commander and Private Party, they run out to make the save. They were attacked last week in a weird thing. So then the baby faces were roughed on the floor. They were roughed up on the floor. Moxley was pulled to ringside before Danielson could drop kick him into the corners. And so Danielson takes to the mic. He recalls Moxley saying he wanted a war. He declares war. Danielson said Moxley could face him at Wrestle Dream. Danielson, this is the one thing I hate, like with TBS, like he gets censored saying, "Yeah, I'm gonna kick your fucking head in." That's a good thing about YouTube. And then we get the final countdown. Danielson stands in the ring with the baby faces. Private Party and Commander get to share the ring with the world champion. That's the state of this company. Like, man. And so we have it confirmed. It's Danielson, Moxley in Tacoma for the AEW World Championship. That'll likely main event the show. And then on Collision, that open challenge that I mentioned in my primer before, it's Pac, Claudio, and Wheeler against Private Party and Commander for the Trios titles. That'll be on Collision. That has been recorded as part of Grand Slam. This is the first year they're doing Collision Grand Slam. They used to do Rampage Grand Slam. So, admittedly, a fine show. It was better than last week. There were some good matches on this show, but it felt pretty much like, I've seen this stuff before. Like the Darby John stuff. I've seen that match before. I've seen the Young Bucks match before. I mean, the Mariah May and Yuka Sakazaki match, it didn't need to happen. The angle, a lot of the post stuff actually was better than some of the stuff in the ring. Like, I love the stuff with Hook and Taz. As little as it might be, that was a beautiful moment. That was a great moment in New York City. Like, Bryan and Nigel was fine. It was really cool to see Nigel wrestle for the first time in 13 years in a singles match. I love Bryan Danielson to death, but that match just felt like kind of there. There was no emotional investment. Young Bucks match I've seen before, like the Mariah May. Like I said, this show was, for a Grand Slam and for being such built up as one of the bigger shows in a big time stadium, it didn't really feel like that. It felt like a by the numbers Dynamite. It was kind of meh. It was kind of there. It wasn't anything inherently terrible about it. God bless the fact that Chris Jericho didn't waste television time. But there's still issues with this company. There's still issues. Like, I don't have an issue with Jon Moxley challenging for the World Heavyweight Championship in this scenario. I get it. But at the same time, there's a much better person to take that title off of Bryan Danielson with a whole hell of a lot more heat than Jon has. And that's Hangman Page. That's Hangman Page. It's just like, I don't understand why they can't go there. And they're having Hangman on... Hangman's not even on the show and on Collision. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Another critique, and maybe this is by design because maybe, Tony Khan's listening to us. Mercedes Moné has been nowhere to be found on AEW programming since All Out. Nowhere to be found. We just haven't seen her. Nothing for Mercedes Moné, basically, for the most part, since All Out. She might have had a promo after All Out, but I can't even remember. It's just, I don't know what's going on there, man. But hey, Britt Baker's coming back. They literally hadn't mentioned her until Collision, so... But I did like some of the post-match stuff. The stuff after the women's match, seeing Willow get inserted in there is great. And obviously the element of surprise with Mina Shirakawa. Everybody wants to see that, so that's great. I love Bryan Danielson to death. Like, it's always great and I will always cherish moments to see him in a ring. And also getting to hear the final countdown's awesome. But yeah, like I said, the big overriding point here is, like, for a show that was supposed to be as big as Grand Slam, and you have some of these matches and they're all fine, but it's just like you're not emotionally invested in a lot of these characters and what they're doing. Like, obviously I care about Bryan because Bryan's Bryan, but it's just, hey, end of the career. It's just like it's not anything inherently interesting really going on. That's why this product's cold. So, I know I've probably gone a little bit longer than I normally do here for most of these shows, but thanks for watching this. This has been Off the Top Rope here on the Off the Mic Sports Network. We'll have a lot of other wrestling content throughout the week. Really excited about a lot of the stuff that we're putting out here. Perfect blend of sports and sports entertainment here on the Off the Mic Sports Network. We'll see where everything goes. We're heading on the road to Wrestle Dream. We've got the 5-year anniversary next week. Ricochet Ospreay, which admittedly will be awesome, but I still think that they are just again, like the Danielson, Nigel match. You have many opportunities, and you only have one opportunity to really make a first impression of, like, that dream match. And obviously Nigel and Bryan's a little bit of a different situation because Bryan's near the end. There's no rush to do Ospreay and Ricochet, but they're doing it next week. So, all right. Hopefully it sells you some tickets and you can actually put more butts in seats, Tony Khan, when you sign that huge money deal that you're going to get from Warner Brothers Discovery. But, okay. That's it for this AEW review. Thanks for watching, everybody. I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.